Good morning. Thank you all for coming here today. I am John Ettling, president of SUNY Plattsburgh, and we at the college are delighted and honored to be your hosts for this presentation by Governor Cuomo of his 2015 Opportunity Agenda and to hear what he has in store for our region. But before we begin today's program, I would like to welcome several distinguished guests and elected officials who are here in the audience this morning. Clinton County Treasurer Kimberly Davis. Would you please stand when I call you? Yeah. Clinton County District Attorney Andrew Wiley. Plattsburgh Mayor Jim Calnon. Plattsburgh Town Supervisor Bernie Bassett. Essex County Board of Supervisors Chairman Randy Douglas. Franklin County Board of Legislators Chairman Billy Jones. Hamilton County Board of Supervisors Chairman Bill Farber. North Country Regional Economic Development Council Co-Chair and President of the North Country Chamber of Commerce, Gary Douglas. North Country Regional Economic Development Council Co-Chair and President of Clarkson University, Tony Collins. And members of the College Council from SUNY Plattsburgh and all other distinguished local officials who have joined us today. Thank you for coming. We are pleased to have Governor Cuomo back on our campus. I think this is the third time in my memory that you've been here, and I've had the great pleasure of introducing you. But he's made far more frequent trips to the North Country during his term as governor. Governor, you should know that this year, SUNY Plattsburgh is celebrating its 125th anniversary, that we were chartered in 1889 as a college for the preparation of teachers. The Plattsburgh Normal School opened for classes a year later, and we held our first graduation ceremony in 1891 for only 3 students, not even enough to form a hockey team. That came later. For half of our existence, we were a freestanding institution, and in 1948, we proudly became a charter member of the new State University of New York. As an integral part of the higher education network in the North Country, SUNY Plattsburgh plays a vital role for our students, not just in preparing them for their careers, but also by supporting the local economy into which they are graduating. We've been proud to partner with Governor Cuomo to support the upstate economy, and through initiatives like the Regional Economic Development Council, we've secured significant amounts of state funding for economic development projects in our region. I will say I'm proud to have been a charter member of the North Country Regional Economic Development Council, and I've watched and participated and basked in the reflected glory that Tony and Gary and my colleagues on that council have brought to the North Country. So continuing that kind of investment and focusing on the region's economy, these are the keys to creating jobs and attracting new businesses to our community. We look forward to keeping that momentum going by working with Governor Cuomo and his team. Now, would you please join me in welcoming the chair of the Clinton County Legislature, Sam Dyer.
Thank you, Dr. Edling, and good morning to all of you. As a longtime North Country native, I think it's clear that the state government has renewed its interest in the North Country since Governor Cuomo took office. From tourism to infrastructure improvements, we have seen some welcome changes over the last 4 years. Tourism is one of the main drivers of our economy, and in this governor's help in promoting everything from snowmobiling to whitewater rafting to people from all over the country and beyond. The governor also recently announced a proposal to provide a major boost to our high-speed broadband access, which we are very excited about. With everything from schools to businesses relying on internet for their daily operations, it is important that we upgrade the critical infrastructure in order to remain competitive. I am pleased to see the governor's focus on the North Country continuing with this year's agenda, and I look forward to seeing what the rest of the legislative session brings for our region. Thank you. I would like to introduce our Assemblywoman Janet Dupree.
Good morning. As Dr. Etling has mentioned earlier, there's a critical linkage between our higher education institutions and economic development that we have been working to strengthen with the help of Governor Cuomo. In his recent Opportunity Agenda, Governor Cuomo laid out an ambitious agenda that will build on infrastructure and business opportunities in the North Country. Cutting the business tax will catalyze growth and development across upstate localities. Our local businesses will now be able to prioritize their funding and invest their money in the resources that they need to successfully manage their businesses and expand their workforces. The governor has also helped upstate New York reclaim its business-friendly reputation with the Startup New York program, which has been off to a fast start here in the North Country and recently welcomed right here in Plattsburgh. The program to date has garnered millions of dollars in investments and created hundreds of new jobs across the entire state. By focusing on these projects in the region, we can continue to bolster our workforce development, strengthen communities, and improve critical infrastructure. I'm excited to see what else New York State has in store for the North Country, and I look forward to continuing to work with the governor and my colleagues. It is now my distinct honor and privilege to introduce the governor of the great state of New York, Andrew Cuomo.
Thank you, Donna. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, good morning to all of you. It's my pleasure to be back. First to Dr. Etling and SUNY Plattsburgh that is doing great work. And as the Assemblywoman said, we're making SUNY not just a better education system, not just a better higher education system, but also a driver of the economy all across the state, particularly in upstate New York. And Dr. Etling is doing a great job here in SUNY Plattsburgh following that mission, which is a little different and challenging, but he is right on it. Let's give him a round of applause for his great work. To Assemblywoman Janet Dupree, it's been my pleasure to work with her. One of the things that we've actually done right in Albany is we've de-emphasized the political differences among us, and we've emphasized the commonality. You know, sometimes governments get too caught up in the politics of it. And what political party are you, and what political party are you? And that actually becomes an obstacle to progress. In Albany, the politics is second, the government is first, the people are first, public service is first, and we work together for the good of the state. And Janet has brought that attitude, and it's worked for the North Country, it's worked for the state. Let's give her a round of applause, Assemblywoman Janet Dupree. Chairman Dyer, pleasure to be with you. Thank you for your kind words. To all my colleagues in local government, to the regional economic development chairs, it's a pleasure to be with them. And it's a pleasure to be in the North Country. I don't know that you can feel the difference because, you know, you're here all the time and change comes and it tends to come incrementally, and when it's in your backyard, it's sometimes hard to see. But we've made a lot of progress over the past 4 years, but I would say in many ways the most dramatic progress has been in the North Country. The energy is different. The relationships are different. You know, we talked for years about the North Country having a regional approach and getting out of their box and getting out of their silos, and it's not really counties, it's going to work for a region or it's not going to work for a region. And we kept talking about it, but it never really happened, and you had the East and the West and the North and the South. There is a unity in the North Country that is really different. And the Regional Economic Development Council had a lot to do with that, but just putting people in the same room. And it manifests itself all different ways. One of the ways I see it is now all your local officials together gang up on me whenever they see me. And it's Jones and Farber and Douglas, and they all come at me at once, and they surround you, and they sort of don't let you go until you promise whatever they need. It's bad for me, but it's good for you. It's good for the North Country, and it shows that sense of unity. When you look at the economic growth, North Country for many years lagged the state in economic growth. And the economic growth was downstate, the economic growth was Manhattan, and the North Country was lagging behind. When you look at the economic growth over the past 4 years, the North Country is actually at the head of the pack. When you look at the drop in unemployment, which is a number that's very important to me, are we getting people jobs? The largest drop in unemployment in the past 4 years was the North Country. Not Manhattan, not Long Island, not Buffalo, not anywhere else, but the North Country. And that's kudos to you and what you've done, and that's the proof is in the pudding. So give yourselves a round of applause for that. And we're now deciding on the plan for this coming year and how we're going to go forward, and that's what the legislature is going to be grappling with. And I want to talk to you about what I talked to them about, because frankly, your role in the process is important. This year is a little different. Normally, in the beginning of the year, the governor would do the state of the state, which is a sort of broad thematic plan of what's going to happen, and then a few weeks later would do a budget, and the budget is a very specific, detailed, obviously puts the numbers to it. The beginning of this year, the process got a little fouled up. Unfortunately, my father passed away right in the beginning of the year. I was supposed to do the state of the state right afterwards, and the legislature was very kind and said they would put off the state of the state so I could attend to the personal business, and we would then move forward. So that's what we did, but then I thought about it, and the last thing my father would ever want would be to slow down the functioning of state government. So that wasn't going to last. So I took the budget, which was supposed to be done a few weeks later, and we actually moved up the budget presentation, and we put together the state of the state and the budget presentation. This way, my father was responsible for accelerating state government, which I'm sure put a smile on his face. Combining the two actually made it better from my point of view. And I'm going to ask the legislature to do the same thing next year, because now you just get the whole plan at once, what's going to happen, and we can start to discuss it, and we can get on with it. As Janet said, it is a bold plan and calls for a lot of change, and I want to go through it with you now. The beginning point, there's a point of context. We have made great progress over the past 4 years, and it was a lot of work by a lot of people. But the progress we've made is undeniable. We started with an 8.9% unemployment 4 years ago. We're down to 5.8%. We had some of the lowest credit ratings in the country. We now have the highest credit ratings in 4 years by all three agencies. Upstate was in decline. There's a new energy all across upstate New York now. Taxes and spending in the state were just going up every year. It was like an automatic pilot. It would go up. Taxes and spending are cut to the lowest rate in 50 years. Property taxes were going up on average 6% a year. Now they're going up on average 2%. They were then actually frozen. So it was a great 4 years of progress. There's more opportunity in New York than there's been, and our challenge now is to take that progress and go even further. The main priorities are economics, education, public safety, and ethics. And we start with economic opportunity, because the engine that pulls the train is business, and it's about developing jobs. As long as we're developing jobs, everything else can be dealt with. If business is coming and jobs are being developed, people have hope, people have opportunity, people see a career. If you have jobs coming in, there's revenue, there's taxes, The city can do what it needs to do. The county can do what it needs to do. So we have to keep the economy growing the way it has. Why is the economy growing? I believe it's growing because, first and foremost, we've been cutting taxes in the state of New York. And New York is no longer known as the tax capital of the nation, the anti-business place. We've been cutting taxes for 4 years, and I want to keep doing that. To cut taxes, you have to keep the fiscal discipline. You have to spend less money, and that's a function of discipline. And that's where the state of New York fouled up for decades. The state of New York, over the past 50 years, okay, long period of time, the state spent more money than the people in the state were earning, which you wouldn't think is possible when you think about it, right? I'm doing this economics lesson with my 3 daughters now. The outflow of money must equal the inflow of money. They have to balance. The outflow cannot exceed the inflow because daddy's not always going to be there. And it'll be a rocky marriage if this is how it's going to work. The state of New York never learned that lesson. Literally, we were spending more money than the people in the state were earning. So the taxes kept going up. So literally, we were putting our hand deeper and deeper in the pocket of New Yorkers. We reversed that 50-year trend. And we reversed it dramatically. Where every year New York State was spending about 6.8% more, we now brought it down to 1.3% over the past 4 years. That differential, that fiscal discipline, gave us the money to start cutting taxes. And we have cut them dramatically. Lowest middle-class rate since 1953. That is a long time ago. That's before I was born, 1953, which is a long time ago, and I feel it. Lowest corporate income tax since 1968. Lowest manufacturer's tax since 1917. So, by controlling the spending, we can continue to cut taxes. That's what we have to do, and that's what we want to do. And this year, we want to cut taxes on small business. Why? Because small business is the economic engine. That's where jobs are being created. You don't have big companies coming in with 1,000 jobs at a time anymore. It's harder. You have to create small businesses, and you need more small businesses to get the same number of jobs. Small business tax is now 6.5% in the state of New York. We want to drop it down to 2.5%, which would be the lowest small business rate in 100 years, and would send a really positive message to the small business owners. Stay here, stay with us. We want your business here in the state of New York. Second, we must continue to cut the property taxes, because the property taxes, in my opinion, are the most onerous tax in the state. We have the highest property taxes in the country. In the country. Westchester, Nassau, downstate, they have the highest in absolute dollars in the country. But upstate New York, as a percentage of home value, has the highest property taxes in the United States of America. And when you talk about young people saying they can't afford to live here, they have to move out, that's what they're talking about, the property taxes. You know, it used to be when you wanted to buy a house, the question was, can you afford the mortgage payment? Now the question is, can you afford the property taxes along with the mortgage payment? And those property taxes have been going up. We have attacked them aggressively. Our first year, we capped them at the 2%. We then froze the increase. Now we actually want to reduce local property taxes. We have $1.7 billion to reduce property taxes across the state. Checks would go directly to the homeowners. That's on average 1.3 million homeowners who will save an average of $1,000 a year. And $1,000 a year is a real amount of money that'll make a difference in the families' lives. We also want to extend that to 1 million renters. Part of growing the economy is growing the infrastructure. And the infrastructure of today is broadband. Eisenhower in the 50s said that to facilitate private sector growth, he wanted to build the highway system, the highway grid. And his point was if you had transportation, that will then facilitate private sector growth. The transportation system of the next generation is broadband, is the internet. If you're going to be competitive, you have to have access to high-speed internet. No company and no person in 5, 10 years is going to want to be in a place where they can't have access to high-speed internet. And when you look at the state now, the orange area, which is a very large area, has no access to high-speed broadband. About 500,000 homes have no access at all. Why? Because the internet companies will only pay to run broadband where there's a high density and a high concentration where they can make money. In suburban communities, rural communities who have less density, it's not economically in their interest to lay down the infrastructure for a fewer number of households. We've been working with the internet companies. We're going to joint venture with them statewide, where for $1 billion, we can expand broadband to the entire state by 2018. Every corner of the state will be competitive, not only with any other place in the state, but any other place on this planet. We'll be one of the few states by 2018 to be fully wired. I think it's going to be a big economic advantage for this state in competing with other states, because I think you're not going to get in the game without broadband in a few years. So we're excited about that. We focused on upstate New York's economy like never before. In many ways, what we did over the past 4 years is an exact reversal of what had been done. Upstate New York, in truth, the economy has been declining for decades. And I think it's important that we're honest about what happened in upstate New York to make sure we don't do it again. Upstate started to lose economic power in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s. Manufacturing started to leave. We lost those big companies. When a region loses economic power, we started to lose population in upstate New York. When you start to lose people, you start to lose political power. And the state government in Albany, in truth, was not as attentive to upstate New York as it should be. It was too downstate focused. That's where people were moving. That's where the energy was. That's where the money was. And the state government focused unduly on downstate, not enough on upstate. Upstate got less help, less assistance, more people left, less economic power, and that was a negative cycle down. The exact opposite is also true. You start to gain power, you start to gain jobs, you start to gain wealth, you gain more population, you gain more political power, and that's what we're starting to see. We brought jobs back, 500,000 jobs over the past 4 years, but this is the best news. These are the drop in unemployment rate region by region. And you see how balanced it is. And actually, the North Country had the highest drop in unemployment in the state of New York. And this is the exact opposite picture that you would have seen 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and something we should all be very proud of. That the state is doing better economically, and all of it is doing better economically, not just one region, one part. The regional economic development councils are one of the main reasons why they have done extraordinary work. And Gary Douglas and Tim Collins deserve a round of applause and our appreciation. Three out of four, 75%, the highest ratio statewide. They had the golden touch. And we're going to continue that approach, that regional approach, the partnerships, and we're going to have a competition this year for $1.5 billion in funds that we're very excited about. Startup New York, I'm excited about long-term. Startup New York is very simple. When we talk about competing with businesses and jobs, the competition will say, you know, I can go to Florida, has no income tax. I can go to Texas, has no income tax. And that's been our competition. Startup Zone says, in this zone, geographic zone, which is around a SUNY campus, can be other colleges, but SUNY for sure, because the education institutions are developing the jobs, a startup zone is a no-tax zone for a new business for 10 years. 0 state taxes, period, for 10 years. So a startup zone is as competitive as any place in this country economically. And that old story of, well, I can go somewhere else and it's cheaper than being in New York for business, no, it isn't. If you are in the startup zone, it's actually the least expensive place to site a business. It equalizes the playing field with every other state overnight. And the good news is, these companies don't have to be in Florida or Texas or anywhere else. They can be right here in the greatest state in the country and have 0 taxes in the startup zones. It's been working very well. They're predominantly in upstate New York because that's where we want the growth. We want to continue that. Tourism is another area we've invested in very heavily, but it is one of the great opportunities for upstate New York, especially the North Country. You get 50 million tourists coming to New York City every year. 50 million. My point is we have to reorient the advertising and the tourism to say, come see New York City, that's great, but also you're only seeing one slice of New York State when you see New York City. We have a lot more to offer. Come see New York City, but also come see the North Country, Western New York, et cetera. And our I Love New York campaign has been doing that. And it has dramatically increased tourism. And one of the reasons you see that upstate economic growth is because of tourism, and we want to keep at it. Fort Drum is a great North Country asset. We want to expand on it by buying an additional 1,300 acres for training and $25 million in improvements along Route 26. We believe in the Clarkson-Trudeau partnership, and our budget continues the $35 million commitment. We believe that we can make Clarkson-Trudeau a leader in the biotech industry. It's creating jobs, it's advancing society, and we want to keep that partnership going. We talk about economic growth. We also want to make sure everyone is growing on the entire economic spectrum, right? And we want to make sure those working families are also seeing progress. We raised the minimum wage in 2012. In truth, the wage gap continues to grow, and we believe the minimum wage is still not where it should be. The concept of a minimum wage is that if you work a minimum wage job, you can pay for food, you can pay for rent, you can support your family, and you don't live in poverty. That is the concept of the minimum wage. And I don't think we're there yet. We want to raise the minimum wage to $10.50 an hour. We can afford it, the companies can afford it, we have the job growth, and $10.50 people can start to live with the dignity that they deserve to live with. We have a major focus on education reform. We've been talking about education reform for many years, but it's hard to do. We want to recruit the best teachers, we want to close failing schools, and we want to invest in early education. Recruiting the best teachers is just that. And we're willing to put our money where our mouth is, and this is a very simple proposal that we think can make a big difference. If you are willing to be a teacher in the state of New York for 5 years, we will pay for your SUNY or CUNY tuition if you are one of the top graduates in your class, period. Give us 5 years as a school teacher, and we'll pay your SUNY or CUNY tuition if you are at the top of your class. You want the best teachers coming in? Offer an incentive, pay the tuition. And we're excited about that. For the existing teachers, we need a real teacher evaluation system. But then we should incentivize high-performing teachers. You want teachers to do well and work hard? Offer them a bonus if they do that. Help struggling teachers. And if we have teachers who are failing, then we should get them out of the classroom. The current teacher evaluation system that we just started is not accurate. We have about 38% of our high school students are college-ready. But by the teacher evaluation system, 98.7% of high school teachers are rated effective. 30% of the 3rd to 8th graders are proficient in English. 99% of the teachers are rated effective. 35% 3rd to 8th graders proficient in math, but 98% of the teachers are rated effective. You can't have 98 and 99% of the teachers rated effective when the students are only 30 or 35% at grade level. Clearly, the evaluation system is skewed. Almost any evaluation system, you can't have 98, 99% effective. We want to have a fair, accurate system for both the students, the parents, and the teachers. The teachers deserve to be evaluated accurately and fairly. The students deserve the same thing. This system isn't doing it. We want to have a fair evaluation system for all, and then we want to use that to incentivize the top performers, where the state will give a $20,000 bonus to the top performing teachers in the state. Those who are rated highly effective, which is the top rating, we'll give them a $20,000 bonus, and we'll ask them to mentor the teachers that are not doing as well in return for that $20,000 bonus. For teachers who need support, we'll offer teacher improvement plans with support services, counseling, etc. For those teachers who chronically fail the evaluation over a period of years, and even with the support services aren't performing, then we need to be able to ask those chronically ineffective teachers to leave the classroom. Under the current system, it is so hard to get a teacher out of the classroom that most school districts will tell you they don't even try. We have situations where we have school districts who've been charged with sexual assault of students who we can't get out of the classroom. That's gone too far, in my opinion. Now, the teachers' union says that I don't appreciate teachers. I do appreciate teachers. And I want to incentivize them. I want to pay their tuition. I want the high performers to get bonuses. I want the struggling ones to get help. And it's not that I don't love teachers. My mother was a school teacher. She now does mentoring, which is an extension of that teaching profession. I do believe in teaching, and I do believe in the profession. That's why I want a fair evaluation system. That's why I want the bonuses and the support services. But if a teacher is chronically failing, then this is not really about the teacher. It's about doing the right thing by the student. And the education system at the end of the day is not there just to employ teachers. It's there to help students. That's why we run the classrooms. It is about the student at the end of the day. It's not about the teacher. And if a teacher is failing the students, then let's do the right thing by the student, and let's get them a teacher that can actually work. And that's what the evaluation system is all about. We have chronically failing public schools in this state where less than half the population graduates. The failing schools, when you look at them, 9 out of 10 are minority districts or poor districts. 178 are in the state. 77 of those have been failing for a decade or more. That means over that decade, we sent 250,000 children to public schools that we knew were failing and we knew were non-performing. That's 250,000 children over 10 years. You know, where was your responsibility to those children? And if we have a failing school, and it's been failing for 10 years, at one point, doing the same thing over and over again, right? Expecting a different outcome, that's insanity. Let's try something different with the failing schools. Massachusetts is taking their failing schools, turning them over to not-for-profits. They've had great success with this, and that's what we want to do in New York, copy that Massachusetts model. If a school has been failing for a long period of time, change the management, let a not-for-profit take it over, let a charter school take it over, let another school take it over, let a state take it over. But you can't just keep sending students to a school that you know is failing year after year after year without doing something different and without trying something different. We want to also invest in early education. Every study says the younger you get them in the classroom, the better they'll do. We have $1.5 billion. We want universal pre-K for 4-year-olds, which we are still implementing across the state, but the state will pay for universal pre-K for 4-year-olds. And we want to start pre-K for 3-year-olds, because studies show that 3-year-olds actually have the greatest capacity for learning and for growth. And let's start developing programs for 3-year-olds. No other state in the country has universal 3-year-old pre-K, but it would be the best start for education that you could possibly offer. There's a lot in this reform plan, and we have 2 options on the educational funding. The budget's supposed to go up 1.7%. That's what's in the agreed-to budget from last year. If we can get these reforms done, I would support an increase of 4.8%, just under 5% in the education budget, because I think if we had these reforms and you had higher funding, you could transform the education system, and it would be a good investment. In terms of public safety, there is an issue that doesn't get enough attention in this country, which is sexual assault on campuses, primarily of young women on campuses. New York State has 11 schools that are being investigated for the way they handle sexual assault of women, more than any other state. That's partially misleading because we probably have more schools than any other state. But this is not a good statistic and not a good fact. And it's something we have to change. And something I think we can take the lead on, actually, in this country. And we started already with our SUNY system, which is what's called the affirmative consent rule, that both parties must affirmatively consent to a sexual relationship, and what's called women's access to law enforcement. What happens now is if a young woman is a victim of sexual assault and goes to the campus, many campuses try to handle the matter as a private internal affair. And from the school's point of view, they don't want publicity. They don't want it in the newspaper. It's not good for anyone. The woman is most often in a fragile position, and the campus handling it internally with their campus security. They'll call in the man. You now have 2 stories, 2 sides to the story. It's often handled as an academic matter privately in the campus setting. Our point is, I understand why the schools prefer to keep it quiet. I also understand that it is not an academic matter. This can be a criminal matter. When you look at the numbers, it's actually a very small percentage of men who are believed to have a very high rate of recidivism. One of the reasons the rate of recidivism is so high is because they're not stopped the first time or the second time or the third time. You want to bring down the rate of recidivism, you want to bring down the number of rapes and sexual assaults, then let that woman have access to the local police or the state police, let them do a real investigation, and if it's a crime, and if she wants to proceed, let it be handled like a crime, and if that person is punished, that person is punished, but that's how recidivism is ended. Because the woman is a victim, and the woman has rights, and at that very delicate moment, the woman should know that she's fully supported, and if this was a criminal activity, it should be treated as such, and the woman didn't do anything wrong. That policy is now in effect in SUNY. We've had a good experience on the SUNY campuses. We want to take that policy and have it apply to all colleges in the state, private colleges also. I believe if we do it in the state of New York, you will see this policy go all across the nation. There are some policies that when this state puts them in place, people notice. You know, we're not just, I don't want to be a typical arrogant New Yorker, but we're not just another state, we're the state of New York. And when we do something, people notice. And when you put this policy in place in this state, and other states start to question it, why wouldn't you have this policy? Why wouldn't you say you have to have affirmative consent? And why wouldn't you say to the woman, if you want access to law enforcement, we'll get it for you, because you may have been a victim of a crime? Of course you want to support women, and of course you want this punished properly. And I think this will go right across the country if we do this, and I think it should. Extreme weather is the new normal, as you know. Unfortunately, we want to invest $15 million in an online system to coordinate the local government and the state government and the federal government. We're also going to be doing the final stage of our weather detection system, which will be one of the most sophisticated in the country. Detecting the weather is not just a convenience anymore. It's not just whether you take an umbrella to work or not. We deploy personnel on this. We deploy equipment on this. And when the prediction turns out to be incorrect, it's very expensive. And sometimes we're not where we should be. Or sometimes we've taken a lot of energy and activity for no reason. These weather detection systems will be able to tell local government what the height of the streams are, what streams are building, so you can predict where there's going to be flooding. It'll be a tool that we never had before. We want to finish funding it. And finally, an ethics reform. We've done a lot of good work over 4 years. And there's a lot that Assemblywoman Janet Dupree has to be proud of, and the members of the Senate and the members of the executive. But there has been a shadow over this progress. And the shadow is these continuing situations and headlines of scandals from Albany. And this year, I want to propose a dramatic ethics reform that can make a significant difference once and for all. We call it the Clean Up Albany Plan. Strongest campaign finance disclosure, pension forfeiture for legislators who commit felonies, reduce legislators' per diem so they don't make money going to Albany. They get reimbursed their cost, but they don't make money going to Albany. Don't use campaign funds for personal expenses, and what I call ultimate disclosure, which if a legislator makes outside income, they have to disclose who paid them and what for. And this is really the nub of the issue. Who does the legislator work for? Who is paying them? And when they vote, who are they representing? The people of the district, or do they have a private client who may be engaging them that they have a conflict? And disclosure says, this is what I made, this is who paid me, and here are the clients, and these are the matters, and I have nothing to hide. And I think just that disclosure in and of itself will bring a level of confidence that we don't have. And I think the lack of disclosure causes suspicion. When you don't want to tell me who you're representing, who your clients are, then you're making us suspicious. And people have enough reason to be suspicious of Albany already. There have been enough incidents. We want to actually improve it. Why? Because if we have more trust, we can actually do more good things. Any relationship is about trust at the end of the day. And if you trust the Albany government actually can be more effective. I've said to the legislature that I've made this a condition of the budget. We've gotten 4 budgets on time in a row, and I'm very proud of that, and that's a great fact. I'd love to get 5 on-time budgets in a row, but I think it's more important to get this ethics reform done. Because, again, if we don't have it, we don't have trust. And without trust, it's not going to work anyway. What does the plan do if we enact this? We'd have lower taxes, which will continue the job growth. It'll start to transform the education system. It'll be a safer and fairer New York with those sexual assault laws. And the disclosure laws, I think, will bring a new level of trust. But again, as Janet said, this is a big change plan. And change is hard. Change is really hard. And it's often easier just to keep doing what you're doing than to change. I was HUD secretary in the Clinton administration. One of the things HUD did was public housing. And I was in a city one day with the mayor, and HUD had built public housing, these monster towers, all packed tightly together in one part of town. And they did this in the 50s. And since the 50s, this was the poorest part of town, and it was the highest crime part of town. And despite all the police, there were young people getting killed, and it had gone on since the 50s. And government had tried everything, this policy, this plan, this plan, this plan. And I said to the mayor, you know, it's not working. There was a mistake to build those high rises, all that density, all at one place. He said, well, what do you want to do? I said, I want to take them down. And he said, well, that would be very disruptive, he said. And I thought for a second, I said, yeah, it'd be very disruptive. But 40 years this has been going on. And people are dying, and it's expensive, and nothing is changing. So yes, it would be apparently disruptive, but the current situation is intolerable. But human nature is, I would rather continue doing what I'm doing than actually change, because the change is disruptive. And disruptive is bad, and disruptive is controversial, and disruptive is unsettling. The routine, I feel safe. Couple in the morning sitting at the breakfast table. We need to change, honey. Yes, we need to change. That person really means you need to change. You know, that they're fine. They just have to keep doing what they're doing. You are the problem. They want to keep their routine because the change is hard. And dramatic change is really hard. And this is dramatic change. And this isn't just dramatic change for a person. This is an entire legislature. This is an entire education system. This is a campus system. And you're trying to change those basic systems. And it's very, very hard. And the legislature is going to hear a lot of static when you go to change. When I went to bring down those HUD buildings, you would think they were the Taj Mahal all of a sudden. How can you take down the buildings? Eventually, we took them down. The community was better for it, and it's been better since. But that moment of change is hard. That's what I'm asking the legislature to do. And for them to get past this change, enact this change, I need your help. Because they've heard me, and they've heard my message, and I've talked to them till I'm blue in the face. You know whose voice is more important than mine? Yours. Because they represent you. And that's what democracy is about. And I need your voice in this debate to make this change. We've had a great 4 years. New York is moving in the right direction. The North Country has had the best 4 years economically, politically, probably in modern political history. We want to keep that energy going. We believe that you ain't seen nothing yet, that we're going to take that energy in the North Country and not just build back the economy. Our goal has to be to build an economy that is better and stronger than has ever existed in the North Country. And I believe together we're going to do exactly that. Thank you, and God bless you.
Well, thank you, Governor Cuomo. That was exciting. And thank you all for coming. This concludes our program.